How's it, everyone? Welcome back to another court checklist right here on OpenCourt. I'm Ken, and today I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about for a little bit. This actually kind of popped into my head as I was making my last string review, which was the 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐿 4G, and I wanted to talk about why tension maintenance doesn't matter, at least to me. And I get this question sometimes from, not so much from the community online, but I got this question a lot when I was playing in Japan. What strings are great for tension maintenance? And the truth is, the stiffer you go, the tension holds a little bit better, but stiff strings are not meant for most people. And I kind of had this epiphany when I was first using 4G over 5 years ago. The reason I switched to that was because I used to use the Alu Power before, and that one had a steep, sharp cliff in terms of tension drop after the initial play session. 4G held tension a lot better, but recently I've come to realize that tension maintenance doesn't really matter so much for me. And I always say this when I do my reviews, is that tension maintenance and durability is one of the lowest priorities on my rankings. And that's just subjective for me. Maybe it might be important for you, but I cut out my strings once a month. And most players actually should be doing that as well. I do not recommend using a string, especially if it's a polyester, until it breaks. So there are two reasons for this. The first one is pretty obvious. When tension drops, the playability drops. It plays like a completely different string than when it was fresh. A lot of polyesters the launch angle tends to get higher and higher as the tension drops, and it becomes much more springy, more powerful in a bad way, because then it becomes uncontrollable and they start to fly long and fly out. I noticed this a lot when I was using poly after the 5th or 6th play session. When tension drops, it becomes a lot harder to control. But the second reason, and probably the more important one, is that when the tension drops, although the string bed becomes a little bit more powerful and it feels like the tension has dropped, it's probably dropped 10 to 15 pounds. It actually is worse for your arm to use a string that is dead. So the reason for that is because tennis strings, especially polyester strings, when you hit the string bed, the strings tend to stretch and stretch and stretch, and that's what causes the strings to kind of absorb the shock. But after a while, if it doesn't break, the strings tend to reach a point where it can no longer stretch anymore. It hits that limit. And when that happens, and when you're hitting the strings, that vibration is going fully into your arm, and it's actually very bad for your arm to be using dead polyester strings. So this is why I personally cut out my strings every month. I want to maintain the playability, but I also want to protect my arm by not using a dead polyester string. And thankfully, thank God, knock wood, I don't have any arm problems at all. And that's why I was able to use a lot of polyesters until they broke, but those days are over. I don't want to risk hurting my arm, but more importantly, the playability matters, and that's why for me, I cut out strings once a month. That might seem excessive. I know strings and getting your racket strung is expensive, especially if you live in a place where it's not as accessible to get your racket strung cheaply. You might be inclined to use something that holds tension better. And so I got the 𝐦𝐿 4G here strung in my Speed Pro that I reviewed recently. This would be a string that I would recommend, although it does play pretty stiff. I know a lot of people think this string is stiff, but if you're going to use something that's going to maintain tension well, this could be an option, but really the best option is natural gut. Natural gut players and players with very good sound mechanics are really the only players who should be using strings until they break, because once tension drops, cut it out. Protect your arm, get something more playable, freshly strung, and continue playing. This is why I cut out strings once a month. It's up to you really if you want to keep playing with a string that's dead until it breaks. If you want to save money, that's up to you. But I'm just putting that out there, and this is why I cut out my strings once a month, and this is why tension maintenance doesn't really matter much to me. It's one of the lowest priorities for me. But if you're looking for something with more tension maintenance, I know it's expensive, but please consider using natural gut, maybe as a poly hybrid to save you some money, but your arm will be very thankful for it in the long run. So thank you for watching this court checklist. This is something that I've wanted to talk about for a while because I want all of you guys to be able to have a healthy arm so you can keep playing tennis as long as possible. I have more exciting reviews coming up, so stay tuned for that. And as always, if you guys like this content and want to see more, be sure to overhead smash that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in an open court.